Hello, welcome everybody to Bit Nerd, your daily nerd on the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. My name is John Polink. I record this show from Las Vegas, Container Park in downtown Las Vegas, along with my partner Michael Deeb in San Francisco. We patch him in. Michael Deeb, how are you today?
Patched in.
All right, we're going to get right to the cars. What we do on this show is we find the most interesting car of the day from all the auction sites. We have a conversation about that car, that specific car, not just the model. This isn't a review show where we talk about these cars in general. We're talking about a very specific car that is up for auction right now on one of the auction channels. We make a prediction as to what's going to happen with that car's auction, and then we reconcile our predictions at the end of the show by going into the future. We have a flux capacitor right over there. We turn it on and we will tell you what happens, and you can play along by putting your bids in the comments below. And we really appreciate you doing so, along with hitting the subscribe, like, and notification button. Before we get to today's car, we just want to give a shout out to our good friends at Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. They are a Porsche Classic dealer, the first Porsche Classic dealer in North America. So we welcome them to the Nerd Herd, part of the Nerd Nation. Thank you, Godden Porsche of Las Vegas, for supporting the show. All right, let's get right to the car, because look, I love this car. I've always had a soft spot for one of these. I have some personal, anyways, let's talk about today's car. What do we got, Mike?
Yeah, you've told that cool story about driving that Z Turbo when nobody had seen one on the road. You've told that on the show before. That's a great story. John, on Bring a Trailer, we're looking at a no reserve 1994 Nissan 300ZX. This is a non-turbo. It is a glass T-top two-seat car. This is not the 2+2. This is just the regular one. 16,000 original miles, offered out of Chatsworth, California. And again, JP, did I say no reserve? This car is going to sell. Specifications for this car: 5-speed manual transmission, limited slip differential, 6-speed manual transmission, and the more I get older, the more I appreciate gray cloth interior. JP, the interior on this car looks beautiful. Glass T-tops. The one thing that would have to go, and you'll see this when you get to the interior photos, JP, there's like a flip-up bay for where the audio system is supposed to go. This guy replaced it with this big modern Blaupunk like navigation screen, and if it's my car, get rid of that stuff. Just put the stock stereo back in and relax, dude. But the MSRP on this car, JP, believe it or not, almost 30 years ago, was $35,000. Now, if this were a turbo in this colorway with that manual gearbox and in this low miles and condition, this is a six-figure car. So I would think that the price of the turbos now, breaking the bank in collector condition, would bring up these often and for a long time unloved non-turbo cars. It's got to bring those values up. And so I just thought this would be a curious one to look at. You know, a lot of people want to start take their first steps in, kind of the old sports car or the car collecting market. For me, with my dad knew a lot about cars, and so he could take a gamble on a Fiat or an Alfa, and even if the car was a pile of junk, we could figure out how to work on it and get it running again. But if you're new and if you don't have somebody to show you the way, you could do a lot worse than buying a non-turbocharged 300Z with 16,000 miles. I think this would be a great first car for somebody who's just sort of getting into it and wants to get out and drive. Modern cars don't drive like this. This is a fun car. It's got like 225 horsepower. It's got plenty of power. You would really enjoy driving this car on a back road. I probably couldn't say enough nice things about it, but JP, this is your car, man. I know for a fact, you mentioned to me off air that you would actually prefer a non-turbo over a turbo, and this car is black and the roof comes off. Did I accidentally pick you your next car? Are you going to buy this thing? Look at it, man.
I am definitely going to be paying attention to this auction. This is something that I absolutely love for sure. This car was such a spaceship when it came out. This was
right?
totally different from everything else, and it's interesting that have you driven one of these, Deep? Have you spent any time behind the wheel
Not
of
with a
one?
manual. So cousin Billy had this car in pearl white convertible automatic, and
Mm.
he changed the exhaust tips, and it wasn't loud enough for him. But dude, we went on road trips and drove that car all over the place, and he lent me the car a couple times. So I've driven the automatic version of this car, and even it was really, really nice to drive. But a manual would be so much more. This is a 6 speed. Oh, yeah,
Well,
I
yeah,
like
I
this car
mean
a lot.
that's why I asked the question, because it's like you say, it's not like driving a modern car, but it really is. I mean, that was the thing. This car was such a leap forward at the time, and when they actually hit the ground in like 1989, you got to
Uh-huh.
figure the 911s. These were on the same showroom. These were on the showroom floor the same time that 964s were on the showroom floor. And
Yeah,
if you remember back then, everyone was poo pooing 964s because they were just like, basically, people thought of them as an old 911 with some lipstick, with the bigger bumpers
right.
and stuff like that. This car was a complete departure. This car, from when you're growing up in the 70s and 80s, this was just a totally new design language. All the flowing design panels. I mean, this thing was just amazing on the road. And I remember I washed cars for a Nissan
Oh yeah,
dealer,
yeah,
Volkswagen dealer in 1989 when these hit the ground. And I remember going to one of the other Nissan dealers to pick one of these up for a dealer trade with my boss. Shout out to my old buddy, Craig Withy, if you're out there watching. We used to work at Pignataro Volkswagen together. Now he's a big he's a GM at some dealership now. But
yeah.
Pignataro's still around. I'll shout out to Tony Pignataro too. But I remember seeing one of these for the first time. They had a black one on another dealership's showroom floor. We had to go get it because someone at our dealership sold it. And I got
Yeah.
to drive it back, and seeing it, I remember saying to Craig, I was like, "Oh my God, that's my dream car." And he looks at me like, "That's your dream car? Not like a 911 or a
Yeah.
Ferrari or something like that?" And he shamed me, rightly so. But looking at these photos, and I've always been a Porsche guy, but I don't know. Looking at these photos now, maybe I was right. This car is great. I would totally love
Yeah.
to drive this thing. The tech
Well,
on these was so, yeah, they had, like, some of them had the heads up display on the windshield, and then the automatic climate control, and a 6 speed. Nothing had a
yeah.
6 speed back then. Was there?
No.
Name another car in 1989 that had
Nope.
a 6 speed manual. Can you think of one? Is this
Nope.
the first car that
Nope.
had a 6 speed anywhere?
I think it might be. I think it might be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Audi didn't go to a 6 speed until like 1996,
yeah.
and even that transmission was one of the first 6 speeds. They bragged about it. I think it's just interesting. John, when the Audi R8 came out, you compared it to, like, say, a 911 GT3, which
Mm-hmm.
still looked like a staunchy 911, or a
Mm-hmm.
Volkswagen Beetle if you're a jerk. And then the Nissan GTR, and those are your competitors. The Audi kind of looked like a supercar. And I always felt that the way the
Wait,
Audi
wait. It
hit the
didn't kind of
market,
look like a supercar. It did look like it. It was.
yeah,
I mean, it was a
yeah,
Gallardo,
and
for crying out loud.
yeah, but I always thought that the Nissan 300Z, when it came out in like 1990 or 89 or whatever it was, that it was like treading on supercar territory.
Yeah.
That it really looked aerodynamic and racy, and was like way ahead of its time. And I thought that when the Audi did that thing with the R8, I was like, wow, that's really there. That's like, sort of the attainable, almost everyman supercar, like something you could possibly own. 300ZX Turbo, looks space age, but you might be able to buy one.
Look at that
And the Audi
interior.
R8,
Nothing had a
yeah.
wraparound cockpit like that back then.
I
Nothing.
know.
The
So
way the
yeah,
door panels
pilot
conform to
focused.
I mean, it wasn't until, like, what, 2 or 3 years later, when the Supra came out, that anything from Japan could even compete. The Supra at the time that this car was when it was brand new,
Oh my
that
god,
thing
with
still looked like
pedestrian.
it was an 80s car. It was designed in 86, right?
Yeah, yeah. It just it flipped the script. This
Yeah.
car, it broke the mold.
And it's such a
Um,
shame because
it's
Nissan has completely lost its way now. Is there a single
oh
Nissan that you have any interest in, other than maybe the new 400Z that
no.
they've announced? That thing looks like kind of a return to this kind of thinking. But everything else Datsun Nissan makes is just junk.
I'm not nearly as in love with the 400Z as I was with this when this
For
came out.
sure, for sure. I mean, yeah,
This car,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, really set the bar. So this will be a fun one to look at because it's a non-turbo. JP, just tell us real quick, why do you personally prefer a non-turbo over the turbo with regards to this generation of the Z.
Well, the turbo was definitely it had, way more performance. I mean, that was another first, one of the
75 more
first.
horsepower.
Yeah, it had 300 horsepower in a 6-cylinder. There were no cars that had 300 horsepower back then, unless you were getting something that was exotic. I mean, that was unheard of. 100 horsepower per liter was like, what? So this car, why wouldn't I rather have the turbo? Straight up maintenance costs. These are, they have some gremlins, and the non-turbo ones just are a lot easier to have work on. Let's face it, it's hard to find people to work on classics. These things are overly complicated. There's a lot of tech. I mean, look at a 964 versus, an earlier, like you look at an 89 911 coupe, like just a regular 89 G50 with the the transmission, or G body with a G50 transmission versus an 89 C4 964. Both cars were on the showroom floor at the exact same time. But those 964s, as much as we love 964s, and I owned one, they are way more complex, and way higher maintenance issues, because all that tech was brand new stuff. You look at the underside of something like a 959 when they came out with, wheel speed sensors that nowadays are the size of a dime and have a wire sticking out of them. Back then, it was an Atari 2600 on each corner. I mean, they're these huge computers, right? They just didn't have this stuff figured out then. So the twin turbo 300Z, a 10 out, working at the Datsun dealer, at the Nissan dealership, I knew the mechanics were like, we just came back from tech school to learn how to work on these. It's a 10-hour labor job to do the spark plugs on a 300Z turbo. 10 hours. So I'll take the manual one, a little less power, and just fling it around like any old 911. These handle way better than an old 911. Okay, so let's get to the value. I'm surprised to see it's only at like six or $7 grand so far.
$35,000 brand new, 6 bids up to $6,000. The car doesn't close for almost a week, JP. Okay. So I do think there's a way to go. But like I said, if you took this exact same car and it was a turbo with a manual, this would be a $100,000 car. So I got to think that this is going to bring up the value to be at least worth 25% of the value of the turbo. So I'm going to go $24,000. I don't think it brings sticker, because the Z's aren't as popular as like the NSXs and the Supras and these other cars, even though it was really the first one to take the Japanese cars to like, world beating performance. The Nissan versions just haven't gotten their due. So I'm going to say $24,000 and send it to you. You're going to come in over or under, buddy?
That's a really good question. I mean, 16,000 miles is crazy low. This is the right color. It is like one of the last years of this particular body style before they went to the 350. Well, I don't know. When did they go to the 350? That wasn't,
I don't know,
till like 2000 or something. I don't know. I'm talking about that. I don't remember how long they made these, but great car. I don't know if it's going to, I'm going to go over. You said 24? Is that what you said? I'm going to park it right above you and go 26. I don't think it breaks 30, but it could, boy, if it were 3 months ago, I'd definitely be in the mid 30s on this thing. But, the thing is, I don't agree with you that a turbo would be $100,000 car. I assume you've seen a comp for that.
Yeah, I think so. Just
Supras
barely,
and stuff like that, maybe. But like you said, the Nissans just don't do it.
200 now. The Nissans don't get the same love. NSXs, since they stopped making them, have been 6-figure. The later ones, $150,000 cars. But the Nissan's really been like the last sort of car to get to that thing, and they're, like I said, the turbos are just starting to touch 6 figures. So I would have to think that these are going to be in that 25% value, because of
it doesn't look like it's in really, really, really nice shape either. It looks like it's in great driver condition, but it doesn't look like a 16,000 mile hermetically sealed perfect example. No. Some of the badging is a little corroded, some corrosion in the exhaust. There's nothing, no problems in that regard from a driver, but I think this would make a great driver. If you get it for 30-ish, you're going to have a really cool classic sports car that you can use. And what do you get for 30 grand in Porsche? I mean, that's
Oh
gonna
no,
that
no.
you
A
know not
Boxer,
you get a Boxster,
a
right? I mean, not that those aren't
Boxer,
great
yeah.
cars, but this thing's gonna be a lot easier on the maintenance side, and you're gonna get as much love from the enthusiast
Head turner,
car. Yeah.
yeah, head turner,
Scene. This is
yeah.
definitely a cars and coffee type of car. What do you guys think of this car? Are we totally off? Is this going to bring way more money? I mean, because look,
That'd be interesting.
we reviewed a GTI, a Mark II GTI, a couple days ago,
Yeah,
and how much we love those cars, and Mark IIs. Part of the reason why we were why we're still kind of stumped on what that thing's worth is because we just never see nice ones. They were
yeah.
cheap for so long, they all got beaten up. These 300Zs have not ever really been expensive, so they got beat up by young enthusiasts as well. So seeing a clean one it's just hard to get an idea of what's going to happen, especially with things going on in the market. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Play along, set your bid in. Now's the time, and we're going to go ahead and fire up the future machine, and we will find out what happens with this 1994 Nissan 300ZX Coupe. Right. Wait a minute. You know what? I'm just noticing something just before I was going to click out. You said it was a 6-speed.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I'm
Is
noticing,
it a
yeah, it
five
says
speed?
it's a 5-speed. Yeah, I
Five?
didn't remember these
Oh.
being a 6-speed. So if all of you guys are out there going, oh, it's not a 6-speed, it's a 5-speed.
I'm an idiot. I only drove the automatic, so forgive me. I don't have experience behind the wheel of these things. I thought they were 6 speeds, so I must have read 6-digit odometer or something silly and got it wrong. So that's my clerical error, not anybody else's. It is worth noting this is a no reserve auction. This car is going to sell. So let's see what happens.
Cool. All right. Well, say in the comments below how much of an idiot Michael Deeb is about not knowing what size or
They know.
what transmission
They
it
know.
is. All right,
Yeah.
let's find out. Let's find out what's going on this car right after this. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden. This guy.
1989 linen gray metallic G50 cab.
Is that gonna be for sale?
It is going to be for sale. The car only has 65,000 miles on it.
Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. And welcome back to Bid Nerds, your daily nerd out on the most interesting car of the day. Michael Deeb, you're picking some really interesting cars lately. This is a great week in auctions to see some numbers that are all over the place.
Man.
People are talking about bubbles bursting and the world is ending and crashing, and people just keep buying classic cars. They're like, you know what, if the world's going to end, at least I'm going to do it in style. I'm going to drive something I like. Today's result we're going to get to right after I say thank you to all of you who have been watching, all those new subscribers that are coming into the show. We really appreciate you guys checking out the show and sticking around. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so now. If you're new to the Nerd Herd, we are happy you are part of the, you're early nerd. You're an early adopter to the herd, and
Early.
yeah, we got to figure
Early
out.
and early infected.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out, we got to get some hats or something like that and send them out some of these people who have been
Swag. We've
subscribing.
been promising swag for 2 years. It's
Forever.
like
It's
swag is
true.
like our imaginary friend Hobbs,
It's true. All right, Deep. What happened with the results of this car?
Boom, baby. No reserve. 16,000 mile 1994 Nissan 300ZX non-turbo coupe with a manual 5-speed. It's in the title. Can't believe I said it was a 6-speed. My bad. John, the car sold shockingly. No reserve. Of course it did. 24,000 was my bid. All week you came in above me. I really just read the tea leaves wrong that the market was softening. At least these special cars weren't. Our car sold, JP, for $30,000 on 23 bids. We're right there. This car is, that number is kind of representative of above market value. But how do you define the market on a basically 30-year-old, 29-year-old car with 16,000 miles? There's really not good comps out there. Again, when you factor in inflation, maybe it isn't worth more money. Maybe that's just inflation saying that's what $22,000 or $23,000 looks like today. It's 30 grand. I will go back to what I said when we introduced this car. I still think that this non-turbo manual 300ZX Coupe is a fantastic starter classic car for you to go out there and meet people and drive beautiful roads and have a reliable car underneath you, a competent car in the turns and with the braking. This is for 30 grand, even if that is higher than what we thought, I still think that's an incredibly inexpensive way to get in, drive, and get out there. I think this car will take you all over your region and reliably get you home. Bring smiles to all the people that you meet because they haven't seen one as nice as yours. And I think the seller won. I think the buyer won. JP, you won. About the only guy that lost on this was me. But I picked the car, and I'm really happy to see what happened here. $30,000. Not surprised. And it still seems like a good value, even though it's above our numbers. So well done to everybody. And John, if you've been scoring this at home, that's 4 for you this week. I've been shut out so far. So when you're done gloating, tell me what you think of that result. Do you like that number, or do you think that that's too high for a non-turbo?
I think your inflation take is right on. I mean, I think that 30 is the new 20. This car is a clean example of one of these. We don't see a lot of those. The car that we talked about on yesterday's episode, and everyone's talking about, is that GTI of the same era that went for almost 90 grand. Look, I think there is potential for one of these to do not as well as that, but close. Like I think if this car were in the same condition as that GTI, and that it would have brought, it could have brought $50,000. But the fact is, this car is nice. It's not really nice. The GTI that we were talking about had 50,000 miles on it, and it looked like it had 5,000 miles on it. It really was a beautifully kept, hermetically sealed yet driven, GTI Mark II. Yeah, with all it was checking all the right boxes. So this car, a super clean 300ZX 2-door manual, black on black with T-tops, should be, if it were clean like that, should be in the 40s or 50s. This is a fantastic car, and frankly, it's way better than the GTI. I mean, this is way more car than that GTI that went for 3 times as much, orders of magnitude more. I don't know. I think you're right in the sense that if you are looking for an entry level collector enthusiast car to enjoy, this might be something that really should be sought after before people kind of figure it out. I actually think the generation before this, 300ZXs, are still, we're finally seeing those creep up a little bit too, but like the GTIs and like these in a lot of ways, they were all roached out because they've always been cheap. But if you found like an 87, 8, or 9 previous generation 300ZX that was a manual 2-door, or not 2-door, manual 2-seater, those are, I mean, I haven't, just like that GTI, I have not seen a clean one for sale at all.
For a while.
Not just in a while, but at all in like 10 years. Like I've never seen a clean one for sale.
All right, I'm going to just call you out a little bit. I feel like when we first started doing the show a couple of years ago, in not back-to-back episodes, but like within a week of each other, we did an early generation 300Z turbo, and then we compared it a couple days later to a Toyota from that pre 300 horsepower Supra, which I think is a Mark IV, right? So I think it was a Mark III Supra turbo. They were both in really nice condition, and we were curious to see which one would bring more money. But I feel like that was the only clean one we've seen in the couple of years we've been doing the show. They rarely come to market, whereas we see this generation of the Z turbos come to market all the time. But this is the first time we've seen, possibly collector condition non-turbo car, and I think it turned out to be a good value. Anyway,
well, they made a lot more of this generation 300Zs. They were very popular at the time. I mean, the bang for the buck was such a big deal. Porsche 911s were way overpriced at the time. I mean, a 964, which this car would compete with all day long. I mean, it just straight up would. I'm sorry. As much as I love 964s, I own one. I mean, a 964 on the showroom floor was probably around $80,000, give or take. I mean, you could probably get an RS, oddly enough, for $60,000. That was the cheapest 911 you could get at the time. But compared to this car, I think they were like less than 30, brand spanking new. This was a heck of a lot of car at the time, half the price with basically the same performance. And honestly, for the era, kind of looked better, like in the sense that it was more, this was a car that represented the future, whereas the 964 was a car that was an old car with new tech and
a legacy
kind of
car.
So this thing was like, oh my gosh, everything in the 90s copied this car.
Yeah.
As much as go ahead.
Interestingly, JP, the MSRP on this car is included in some of the images. It was just over $35,000. So it was a teeny bit higher than you remember. But I'm surprised that it didn't bring MSRP, whereas like that GTI we saw the other day that we're talking about was 5 times MSRP, 4 times.
But this one's just not that nice. I mean,
I agree.
It's got door
You're
dings, it's got the little scratches and stuff. And, as a person who owns black cars are very difficult to keep nice. But this one just wasn't nearly as nice as that GTI, just not there.
Yeah.
I always like that key.
All
right,
cool.
guys, what do you think? Does the 300ZX represent the sweet spot in collector cars, like my partner Michael Deeb says? Or did somebody just way overpay for nostalgia here and these are pieces of crap? I don't know. Let us know in the comments below. What do you think? Are these going up? These going down? Is this just inflation? Is this just the prices kind of falling along with what it should be? I mean, look, do you remember when you could go on Craigslist and find a decent $5,000 car?
No, I don't remember.
I mean, you could not that long ago. Look, there's the Fool's Roll. Shout out to my buddy Cord Shiflett out in Texas. The Fool's Roll is coming up. That's a contest that he's been doing for 11 years. This is the 11th year. They were featured in the Wall Street Journal last year when they did the show, or when they did the drive.
We talked about doing it a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
you and I. You were telling me about it. We talked about it. So tell the audience what that is.
The contest is you go from Austin, Texas to Las Vegas. With
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. So it's a timed rally, right? So you leave Austin, you go to Texas. The person with the fastest time wins, right? It's kind of expensive to enter, and the prize money is big. It's $10,000-$20,000, something like that. But the hook is it's not just with any car, and it's not just a straight fastest route. What they do is they throw in a Sheik's twist. There's like just before everyone goes, they say you have to go and do 20 laps on this dirt track out in the middle of Arizona, or you got to go to a gun range and shoot a bunch of, so it's like, it's the fastest time combined with the best time on that track, or the best shooting, or whatever it is the twist is. And then on top of all that, you have to do it in a car that you paid $2,000 or less for. When they started this 11 years ago, you could go on Craigslist and get a Jaguar XJ6 from like 1996 for $2,000, right?
Yep.
Or a Saab 900 for that, no problem. There's all these. You could get all kinds of neat stuff. You could get a Caprice for $2,000 or something like that, like an old cop car. But now, I don't know how they're going to do it. What do you get for $2,000? I got to call Cord and see if they've upped it to $5,000 because of inflation.
You can't even get a dirt bike or like a Vespa for $2,000 anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
the most fun about the thing is that when you get the car to Vegas, you have to auction it, or you have to sell it. You have to sell the car, and whatever you sell the car for, you have to put on one hand of blackjack or roulette in order to be eligible. They don't tell anyone who won. So you do the thing, and it's a time deal. You get to Vegas and maybe you won, maybe you didn't. You don't know what anyone else's times were and what their score was. So you have to sell the car in order to be eligible for the prize.
We have to do that as a Dirt Fascination video. You and I should just go enter and roll it. That'd be awesome.
We probably should, and we have to make the decision pretty quick. I think they only allow 20 teams, and I think he's up to like 11 or 12 teams already.
What time of the year do they do it? It's got to be
always
non-summer.
April Fools. It's always the April Fool weekend, whenever that is. So it's coming up sooner than later. So yeah, shout out to my buddy Cord. We'll have to give him a holler and get him on this thing. All right, guys, put it in the comments below. What do you think of the auction results of this? Are you going to go on the Fool's Roll? Let us know. Hit that subscribe, like, and notification button if you haven't done it already. See you guys tomorrow with the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. This is Bid Nerds. Bye.
Nerds! Get those nerds!